Hey everybody, Jeff Leeper here, and today I'm going to be cooking you one of my favorite foods, pizza. Not just any pizza, sourdough pizza. So hang tight, relax, and let's elevate.
Okay, first things first, you need to have an active sourdough starter. You should feed your starter about 3 to 4 hours before you use it, and it should look something like this. Next, you're going to add 290 grams of warm water to a mixing bowl, followed by 100 grams of your active starter. When you add your starter, you want to make sure that it floats on the top of the water, which is a good sign that your starter is active enough and that you're not about to waste 24 hours of your life. We're also going to throw in 5 grams of sugar to really get this thing kick-started, which will also help your crust brown in a home oven better. While we let our starter sit for about 10 minutes, we're going to mix our flours. For this recipe, we're going to be using 400 grams of double O flour and 100 grams of Semolina flour, which is a little bit of a curveball, but I think it adds a good texture to the crust. With the added flour from the starter, this comes out to about a 62% hydration dough. Top it off with about 15 grams of salt and our mix is ready. This will yield about 3 10 to 12 inch pizzas, so if you need more, just double the measurements that I'll have in the description. After about 10 minutes, pour half of your flour mix into the mixing bowl and using your stand mixer or your hands, mix it slowly for about 5 minutes, incorporating it until it looks something like this. After letting it rest another 10 minutes, trust me this is going to be worth it, add the rest of the flour and start mixing on medium to high for another 10 minutes. You're going to see the dough getting smoother and smoother, and by the time you're done, it's going to look like this. Now at this point, we're still not done kneading. If you stretch the dough in front of some light, you're going to notice that it's still going to tear pretty easily, and we definitely don't want that. Now is the part of the process that you're really going to earn your pizza. You're going to want to empty your dough onto a non-floured surface and start slapping and folding the dough. And it's about as easy as it sounds. You're pretty much just slapping it down as hard as you can and then folding it over the top and then doing it again. We're going to do that for about 10 minutes until the dough starts getting noticeably smoother like you see here. After thoroughly exhausted, we're going to stretch the dough again and we'll notice that it's a lot stronger than it was before. This is where we want to be. Now that the dough is kneaded, we're going to form it into a ball for the bulk ferment. How I usually like to do this is I'll fold all the corners back to the middle and then I'll flip the ball over and use the unfloured work surface to scrape it until the dough ball gets tight. Once we're happy with that, we're going to transfer our dough into a lightly oiled bowl and we're going to toss it around until it's evenly coated. Next, we're going to cover it tightly with saran wrap and put that in a warm place. I usually like to use my oven because nobody's going to bother it, and it's going to sit there for the next 12 hours. Now, if everything's gone well, you're going to come back the next day and your dough is going to be about doubled in size. It's going to feel very soft and airy to the touch, and now we're ready to make our dough balls. Now we're going to cut the dough into thirds weighing about 300 grams each. In order to make the individual pizza doughs, we're going to fold the outside of it back to the inside using our fingers. We're also going to use the countertop, kind of like we did earlier, to scrape the dough balls until there's no longer a seam on the bottom. This takes a little bit of practice, but even just rolling the ball on the surface and pinching it together at the bottom to make sure there's no seam is perfectly fine. Now we're going to make sure we heavily flour a baking tray, and we're going to transfer the dough over, also dusting that with flour. Now all we have to do is to repeat the exact same process with the other two pizza doughs, making sure to flour them and then wrap them in saran wrap where they're going to sit another 6 to 8 hours. About an hour and a half out from cooking your pizza, you're going to want to preheat your oven to as hot as it'll possibly go. I like to use a baking steel over a pizza stone because I think you get a better crust from it, but use whatever you have. While that's preheating, we're going to start prepping our ingredients. For our sauce, we're using a can of San Marzano tomatoes. Instead of using the whole can, we're just going to take out the peeled tomatoes and we're going to discard the sauce that it's packed in. We do this because I usually find that the tomatoes themselves are sweeter and have a lot more flavor than the sauce that they're actually packed in. We're only going to add 3 extra ingredients to the tomatoes themselves because we really want the tomatoes to shine in the sauce. We're going to add good extra virgin olive oil, salt, and some oregano because we're making more of a New York style pizza. Now an extra ingredient that you can add is a little bit of sugar, but it's important to taste your tomatoes to see how sweet they actually are because it can definitely vary. Now you can either run the tomatoes through a food mill or you can use a hand mixer like I'm doing, but make sure you don't get it too smooth. And last but certainly not least, always remember to taste your food. This tasted awesome, so now we're on to building the pizzas. As you can see here, after 8 hours, our pizza dough has risen really nicely. You'll also notice it is going to feel very soft and airy to the touch, which means we're ready to start stretching these things out. Now it's really important when you're taking your pizza doughs out of the pan to pay attention to what's top and what's bottom, because the bottom becomes the top and the top becomes the bottom. So pretty much what I'm trying to say is just flip it over when you take it out of the pan. Now, if you're still with me, we're going to start stretching out the doughs. First, generously cover it with flour, and then we're going to start pushing the air to the corners. Now, if you really want to impress your friends and family, this light, airy edge you just created is actually called the cornice. Will they actually care? Probably not. But they really have no choice to because, well, you're making them pizza, so. But anyways, once you've wowed your audience, it's time to assemble your pizza. And don't worry too much if you don't get a perfectly circular dough. We're making pizza at home, not at Domino's, so just have fun with it. After adding some flour to the peel so it doesn't stick and wildly shaking your sauce-slinging hands in front of the camera, I like to add a good layer of oregano and fine Parmesan. Then it's really up to you to put whatever toppings on that you want. For this pizza, I'm just going with the basics: whole milk, low moisture mozzarella, good pepperoni or salami, and quite possibly the largest leaf of basil I've ever seen in my life.
Holy that's basil.
I mean, seriously, that's just ridiculous. But anyways, drizzle a little olive oil and we're ready to cook this thing. Now I'm going to be cooking this a little bit different than you probably will, and I'm going to have a video on how to convert your Weber barbecue into a pizza oven soon, but this is going to work just fine in your home oven. Once your stone or steel is as hot as you can possibly get it, it's time to slide the pizza on. Now, depending on how hot your oven can get, this can take anywhere between 5 or 10 minutes to cook. This one I cooked took about 6 minutes and it was perfect. Make sure if you're cooking in an outdoor pizza oven, you don't forget to turn your pizza so it all cooks evenly. Even in your home oven, it may be a good idea to peek on your pizza a couple times just in case your oven has a hot spot. Around minute 6, my pizza was looking good and it was time to pull it off the grill. Once you pull off your pizza, it's definitely a good idea to let it cool. It's going to be really hot at this point. You don't want to cut into it and let all the ingredients flow out. But what you're going to be left with is a gorgeous looking pizza that has a great crust and a crispy bottom. As you can see here, it got great leoparding on the bottom and the crust got a nice rise to it. Once we let our pizza cool, it's time to cut into this thing and see how we did. Cutting into this, I could tell we got some crispiness in the crust, but also kept some chewiness. And I actually think that's really important for a sourdough pizza. I think it's important to keep some of that breadiness that comes from a sourdough. It kind of maintains that flavor that we all know and love. And I gotta say, this is one of the best tasting pizzas I've made. You get a great texture from the crust and an awesome flavor from the addition of that sourdough. And although I didn't take my own advice and severely burned my mouth, this is a recipe I think everyone should try. Especially if you're just getting into the world of sourdough and pizza, this should be the recipe for you.
Hey guys, I just wanted to thank you so much for watching the video. I hope you like it. I hope you try it. If you do like it, please leave a like and a subscribe. I really look forward to cooking with you all in the future. But for now, I'll see you later.